first off, I just wanted to thank everybody for making the time to be here today, for taking interest in this new opportunity. Really, really excited to see so many engaged community members here who might be interested in pursuing urban agriculture. So just to begin with, the application period, as you all know, is it's open now, and the application period will close October 23rd. So there's about 2 months of this period for folks to submit their applications. Okay, next slide. So what to expect in this informational webinar? First of all, let me do a little quick introduction. My name is Sarah Bernal. I am the Urban Agriculture Program Lead here at the California Department of Food and Ag. Our program is embedded in the Office of Farm to Fork. And so some of you may have heard of the other programs in our office, which are Farm to School, or our Healthy Refrigeration Program, our Nutrition's Incentives Grant Program, and soon to be coming in the future, a Community Food Hubs program that has not opened yet. All of us are living together under the Inspection Services Office of Farm to Fork Department. And so, yeah, just here to welcome you to the Urban Ag info session. What to expect in this info session is we're gonna do an overview for each of the 2 tracks of funding. In that overview, we will cover the eligibility. We'll also cover the funding details, the grant term, so how long we have to spend funding in this program, what the award amounts are, what some of the allowable costs are, what you can anticipate with regards to reporting, and then what the application looks like and what the scoring criteria looks like. And so before we delve into all these things, one thing I just want to give folks a few instructions on is I'm going to do this whole presentation first. So if you can either type your questions into the chat directly, and then once the presentation, the slides are all done, we'll go and answer all of the questions that were placed in the chat during the presentation first. And then after all of the questions in the chat have been asked and answered to our best ability, you'll have an opportunity to just ask questions live and come off camera or come off of mute, please, and you'll be able to ask questions as well. So half of the time that we have allotted here will be to cover the material, and then about half of it will be for us to answer both questions in the chat, and then your live questions that will happen after we do the questions in the chat. So the very last thing that we're going to cover today outside of all these different tracked opportunities is just the overall grant timeline. So how things will roll out over time. So the purpose and priorities of the Urban Agriculture Grant Program is to award competitive grants to support projects that enhance the viability of urban agriculture in urban areas across California. We're using the priority populations, California Air Resources Board's map to identify our priority populations. So we will be giving priority to projects that are led by or serving priority populations as defined by this map. And the link to all of this is in the RFA and also in Amplifund. The projects who will also be giving priority to projects whose benefits expand beyond the individual and also essentially benefit the broader community. And then projects that clearly display one or more of the benefits of urban ag, and we'll cover what those are. But first, here's the way that CDFA is defining urban ag. So I'll just read through this. Urban agriculture refers to the cultivation, the processing, and distribution of agricultural products in an urban setting, including things like in-ground small plot cultivation, raised beds, vertical production, warehouse farms, mushroom growing, urban forestry and tree care, community gardens, rooftop farms, hydroponic, aeroponic, and aquaponic facilities, and other innovations. Urban farmers and gardeners work amongst diverse populations to expand access to nutritious food, foster community engagement, offer workforce development opportunities, educate communities about food and farming, and expand green spaces. And an important part of this is CDFA defines urban as a geographic area no more than 25 miles adjacent to or outside of an urban area containing a population of 50,000 people or more. So perhaps put more simply, you either need to live in a community, a city of 50,000 people, or be within 25 miles driving distance of a city of 50,000 people. So I mentioned that the projects will be given priority for those that offer one of the benefits of urban ag. And so when we're talking about that, we've got a whole list of benefits that urban agriculture provides, and that is, helping to build social capital and gather communities, providing education and skills development, supplementing access to fresh food, cultivating agricultural literacy, performing ecosystem services, so habitat and environmental restoration, supports economic development, and then increases food sovereignty, which we'll define in the next slide, and then pilots an innovation in production. And when we talk about innovations in production, it's all of these new technologies that are being developed to grow food in maybe controlled environments. So aquaculture, hydroponics, things like that are all considered innovations in production. And so what is food sovereignty? And food sovereignty is defined as the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and people's right to define their own food and agriculture systems. So the reason I wanted to highlight this is that produce grown for this grant program does not need to be for sale to qualify as urban agriculture. And so what does that look like? I mean, a community garden is an example of a food sovereignty project, potentially, where the product is not being grown for sale, it's being grown for consumption by community members. Another food sovereignty project or example of a program where the product is not being sold could be somebody who has a wealth of knowledge and wants to host community workshops, wants to host an opportunity to distribute seeds and starts, or maybe wants to provide technical assistance to assist home gardeners in their community. All of these are not necessarily creating fruits and vegetables for sale, but they are increasing access to the foods that community members may want to see growing locally. So there are two funding tracks. The track one is called the Systems Builder Community-Based Block Grant. We'll review that. And then track two is the Urban Agriculture Practitioners Grant. And so just some real basics behind this. You'll see there's a no. You may not apply to both funding tracks. Folks are only allowed to apply to one track. The second thing to know is if you receive an award in track two, you cannot also receive a sub-award from a track one funded organization. And we'll cover this, might make more sense as we discover what the tracks are offering. Yes, you may apply to this grant if you have an existing grant with CDFA. That is not a problem. And then if you do apply for track two, but you do not receive an award for your grant application, you still have the opportunity to apply for a sub-award from the track one funded organizations in your region. So just keep that in mind. And so we'll start with track one, the Systems Builder Community-Based Block Grant. The purpose of the Systems Builder Community-Based Block Grant is to increase staff capacity and provide pass-through funding for community-based organizations that have a grassroots involvement in urban and regional food systems planning. So eligible community-based organizations may apply for awards from $200,000 up to $800,000 in CDFA funding to engage and administer sub-awards to urban agriculture stakeholders in their region. So that means that Track 1 funded organizations will be able to offer subawards to community members within the range of $5,000 to $60,000. And on top of that, Track 1 funded organizations may also utilize between $5,000 and $60,000 of the award towards an eligible urban ag project that they may be working on internally. So, for example, if you have a community-based organization and the organization has excellent grassroots connections to stakeholders in their region, they know that they're a trusted community leader and that they would do a great job of providing pass-through funding, so providing subawards. They are also able to spend the same amount between $5,000 and $60,000 to, say, help the community garden project that they manage. So, so just keep that in mind. If you're applying for Track 1, you have the ability to fund some internal work within the same range of the subawards that you will be giving. Okay, and so the overview of Track 1, we're really looking for community-based organizations that have grassroots involvement in urban and regional food systems planning. And the goal is to increase the capacity to create and administer subawards to urban agriculture stakeholders in their region. And so some of the tasks that these community-based organizations will anticipate doing is they will have to design the subaward application. I cannot stress how much the benefits of this model are to keep it simple. So this could be an interview. This could be a site visit. It could be a written application or any other method that the community-based organization sees fit for equitably determining which projects meet the criteria of urban ag as defined by CDFA. So the subaward applications or subaward applicants still need to be in urban areas and still need to be either serving or led by priority populations. But the community-based organization will be in charge of whether they want the application process to be, like I said, an interview, a site visit, or some form of written application. So organizations will be in charge of that part of things. They will also have to develop an effective communication strategy to promote the subaward opportunity. So that includes strategies such as translating materials into the spoken languages of your community. It could be, paying for radio or other types of press and advertising. It could be web-based media, hosting a town hall, hosting other types of community gatherings, spending some funds to do mailers through the mail or newsletters, listservs, and more. Also, if desired, this grant allows folks applying for this track to employ staff and or pay existing staff to do all of the work that's involved in developing this subaward process. And then, of course, the final and most important part of it all is these organizations will then be in charge of distributing subawards to no less than 2 urban agriculture stakeholders in your region, and there is no maximum number. So as many subawards as the community desires and as many as you can manage. So the Systems Builder Community-Based Block Grant is divided into regions. A minimum of 1 community-based organization will be funded per region, and a minimum of 1 community-based organization will be funded with statewide reach. And so there are 5 regions, and then the 6th being statewide. The regions are Sacramento Valley, which includes Sacramento and Stockton, and then the Bay Area, which includes the East Bay, South Bay, and North Bay. We have Fresno, that includes Fresno and Bakersfield. And then Los Angeles, which has Los Angeles and Long Beach, and then San Diego. So these are the 5 regions that we are looking for community-based organizations to provide subawards to. And so who is eligible to apply? For Track 1, we have resource conservation districts are eligible to apply. Nonprofit organizations are also eligible to apply, as are California Native American tribes or public universities, institutions of higher education. We have a 10% set aside of the total grant for California Native American tribal projects. And so within all of these eligible entities, we are still focusing on these organizations that have led or participated in creating things like a food systems assessment, a greening plan, a climate action plan, organizations that have worked on urban agriculture assessments or food policy developments or plans and strategies. Anything that has related to community or has been engaged with community-fed research, assessing the regional assets and needs of their community as regard to urban agriculture and the local food system. So those are just some of the qualities that we are hoping applicants will show. The details of this, so the term of the grant, that means that we are anticipating that funding will be available to organizations, like cash in hand for lack of a better term, starting in May of 2024. And then organizations will have through September of 2026 to spend the funding that they receive. So that is a 28-month term for folks to spend their funds. The range, again, is between $200,000 to $800,000. The allowable costs are the staffing that's needed to create, advertise, and administer subawards to our priority populations in their region. And then no less than 2 subawards will be created, hopefully many more. And then also allowable costs include that $5,000 to $60,000 for their internal agriculture project work, if they have that. So the subawards that folks are going to be able to distribute to their community members can cover anything within the realm of infrastructure, equipment and supplies, workforce development activities, technical assistance needs, community engagement, and then also operations. There is a more detailed list in the request for applications, which is found on our website. So feel free to review that list. It's also not a limited list. This is not the only things. This is just a way to help people brainstorm what they can and cannot apply for. So then with regards to reporting, the reporting requirements for track 1 are an annual report that will cover the progress made during the first 12 months and every 12 months after that. A final report, which is pretty much a standalone document. It's not just the 2 reports together. It will be its own comprehensive document that includes the data and results and the discussions from all of the previous years of the project. There will be quarterly check-ins, which are meant to be helpful, not stressful. And it's really to just discuss like what's working and how can CDFA support CBOs as they navigate this process. And then lastly, there is the evaluation that includes survey collection and some basic data collection that will be agreed upon during the interviews that are had with subawardees. So all of the evaluation information for subawardees are found in the sub-award guidelines document, which you will also find in the request for applications. So what are the parts of the application for track 1? All of these headers right here are the different parts that are the full application. There's a total of 100 points that any given application can receive. And you'll notice that some of these sections have little dashes where it says points. That means that those sections are not scored. They're just required. And then the sections that you have these numbers, that's the number of points that you get for answering these questions. And you can actually take a deeper look at the scorecard that describes how to get these points in the request for applications, again, which is on our website. So please go ahead and take the time to look through that if you're curious at seeing more details. But I'll go over them here a little bit. So the first scored section is the urban agriculture in the local food systems section, and folks will receive points for mostly demonstrating how the benefits of urban agriculture, which we talked about earlier, help to meet the existing needs of the community. So that's that section, that's for 15 points. The second scored section is for 10 points, and it's food systems evaluation work. And this is more for getting points for having led or participated in a systems evaluation. And what I mean by that are those reports that I mentioned a little bit ago, like a climate action plan or food policy action plan. So having led or participated in an evaluation will also help gain you the maximum points. The third section that is scored is the ability to manage subawards. And so that is really just an organization describing their experience working with grant funding and contract. And that is for 25 points. Then we have the community collaborations section of questions. And what this is really, it's an opportunity for these community-based organizations to show how connected on the grassroots level they are by collecting letters of support from community collaborative partners. And there's a list of what those partners look like in the request for applications. So you can see an example of who all those different types of community members could be. In order to get the maximum 30 points for this question, organizations would need to provide the maximum number of letters of support, which is 15 letters of support. So if you provide 15 or more letters of support from community members, you will be able to access the maximum 30 points for that question. Assuming that the letters meet all of the criteria, which there are more details to be seen in the documentation in the application. And then the last section that is also scored is the outreach and communications plan. And so that section is for 20 points, and it talks about, you would like to focus on the number of different outreach strategies that you will employ to announce the subaward program. So how are you going to reach populations that are hard to reach? How are you going to make sure that the information is accessible to stakeholders that maybe otherwise would never be able to access this type of funding? So describing your outreach and communications plan is the final scored section for track 1. And then you'll see that there's also a project work plan, which is about describing in a timeline what activities you would need to accomplish throughout the duration of your grant. And then there's just an agreeing to the reporting and evaluation, which I already discussed is the annual report and so on. So that's it for track 1. And so now we're going to jump into our second track, track 2. That's the Urban Agriculture Practitioner Grant. And so track 2 will fund urban agriculture projects that are led by or serve priority populations in urban areas throughout California. And again, we're using this California Climate Investments Priority Populations Map. There are 2 major keys in this map, and the language that's used by this map is, you'll see a layer for disadvantaged communities and you'll see a layer for low-income communities. So any area that is either under the disadvantaged or low income will qualify for this project. And then, so projects are going to be given, projects must execute 1 or more of the benefits of urban ag, and I'm not going to read them again. It's the same list as we discussed earlier. And so who's eligible for track 2? Track 2 is open for for-profit businesses, nonprofit organizations, resource conservation districts, and California Native American tribes. And again, I said it earlier, but there is a 10% set aside for California Native American tribal projects applications. So in addition to these 4 eligibility criteria, another piece of information to know is that all applicants must meet the definition of a qualified small business. And so that just means that the applicants must be one of the following, not all of the following, just one of the following. And that is either a sole proprietorship, an independent contractor, a 1099 employee, a C Corp, an S corporation, a cooperative, a limited liability company, a partnership, a limited partnership, and you must have a gross revenue of less than $5 million, but greater than $1,000 in the 2022 taxable year. Oop, there's an R missing there. A registered nonprofit that has an annual gross revenue of less than 5 million, but greater than 1,000 also qualifies. And then we also are able to accept applications from organizations that are fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit corporation. Okay, and so the grant term for this is the same as track 1. We're anticipating funds to be released around May of 2024 and for the grant period to run through September 2026. So a 28-month period. The award amount for this application for this grant track is $75,000 to $300,000. And we're really just aiming to provide flexible funding to meet the needs of your urban agriculture project and accomplishing one or more of those benefits that were listed of urban agriculture. And again, for this track, anything that is within the realm of infrastructure, equipment, supplies, community engagement work, providing technical assistance or needing to hire technical assistance for different things, your operations, so that means, the cost of your staff time, the operational costs of your project, and then also any workforce development activities that you might be tackling. These are all allowable costs. And so what does the reporting look like for track 2? Well, we're asking as part of the application for you to submit between 5 to 10 photos of the site or project or infrastructure that you plan to improve with the grant funding. You're going to submit these pictures during the application, and then you'll be required to submit pictures of the after effects when the grant funding period is done. You can take pictures throughout the season, whatever makes sense for you. We would take as many photographs on the after side as makes sense, and we can discuss that throughout the period of the grant. So you'll have this 5 to 10 pictures that will be required. You'll have an annual report that's going to cover the progress made during the first 12 months and every successive 12-month period after. And then you'll have a final report that, again, is also a standalone document, including, the data and the results and the discussion from all of the years of the project. And then lastly, the evaluation, which will include survey collection and then data collection as agreed upon during the final agreement. And the final agreement is just when we go through the process of creating a contract for the funds. There will be more details that come out about that. If someone's not on mute, if you wouldn't mind just muting yourself, that would be awesome. Okay, great. So moving on, just to do an overview, here we are. Here is the application and scoring for track 2. So these are the different sections of the application. You'll notice again that there are a total of 100 points for scoring in this application. And in the same manner as last time, there are 5 sections here where you will actually be receiving points. The other ones with the little dashes are just required. So the first section of this application that is scored is the project team, and folks will receive points for providing a clear description of team members' roles and for team members that are a part of the priority population. So projects that are being led by the same community or being led by a priority population community will also help to gain points for this application. The second scored section of this application is the community needs section. And so that's just about clearly describing your communities, your community served and how your project meets an existing need. So that's really what that section is all about, and that's for 25 points. The third section, which is also for 25 points, is the project description. And that's actually broken into what's called a SWOT analysis. And that stands for just writing a paragraph about the strengths of your project, some of the weaknesses, things that are challenges for your project, what are some of the opportunities that you have, and then what are some of the threats that are making it harder for you to be successful. And so that is the project description section for 25 points. You will go through those little exercises in the application portal. And then we have building resources. And so this is really about showing that you are engaged within the community. And so you will need to provide letters of support from collaborators. And that could be, again, there's a list of what these collaborators are in the request for application. So if you want more details, you will find that there. And in order to get the maximum 20 points for that, farms or projects would need to provide 5 letters of support for maximum points. Everything is tiered. So if you had less than that, you would just get fewer points. And then the final section that is scored for 10 points is the project evaluation. And that's really just describing who's going to collect the metrics that demonstrate the success of the project. And so there's also an example of metrics. So that could be anything from volunteer hours collected at the season, linear foot row reserved for pollinator habitat. It could be pounds of produce grown. It could be how many workshops were hosted. So whatever that data or metric is that helps to prove the success of the project and that you're meeting a community need with those metrics is what you're going to need to talk about in that project evaluation section. Okay, and so what's the timeline? So we did a public comment period in June, and you can find all the documentation of public comments up on our website. So there's a documented list of all the comments that were received and then the answers that CDFA provided and how that affected the final RFA, request for application. And then we have the period right now that we're in, which is August 21st through October 23rd. This is our application. The only way to apply is through the online portal through Amplifund. The links for the application are both found on our website. And so you can just go ahead and click on and get started that way. Then we have the period of November through January. So every application that comes in needs to be reviewed by 3 independent reviewers. And so every single application gets reviewed 3 times, it gets scored 3 different times, and then that way we're able to make sure that each one is being evaluated equitably. And so that takes 3 months, that we have a 3-month window to make sure that each application that comes in gets reviewed by an external evaluator 3 times. Then in February, we're hoping to be able to make the notification to folks that you have been awarded, that your application made it through. And so that will happen in February. And then February through May is the more detailed period. It's probably the more grueling period, which is going through the process of finalizing the contract with CDFA, with the California Department of Food and Ag, creating the grant agreement and making sure that all of the documentation and paperwork is signed for us to get started doing all of the back and forth with payments and invoicing that happens within a grant. So then we're hoping that by May 2024, we will be in a place where those contracts are completed and the funding can be released so that projects can get started. And then again, you will have through September 26th to complete your project. A thing to know about this opportunity is that there is no matching requirement. That just means that this is not a dollar for dollar. No additional points will be given for anyone who is demonstrating a match. Applicants may apply for advance payment. So advance payment shall not exceed the amount necessary for project expenses for a 3-month period and cannot reduce the project balance below 10%. So there is an entire document that it's very easy to read and it'll describe what it means to be able to access advance payments, what the guidelines are for accessing that. But just know that this is not strictly only reimbursement. You may apply to access advance payments. And then lastly, Our indirect cost allowance is up to 30% of the total award may be used for indirect costs that include grant administration, the accounting, the printing, and the utilities that are associated with operating the program. So I really wanted to reiterate a few things. Track 1 and Track 2 awardees are all going to get notified at the same time. So if everything stays on track, we should know by February who's going to be getting these awards. If you applied to Track 2, but you did not receive funding, you can still apply for a subaward from your Track 1 community-based organization that's serving your region. So applying for a subaward after being notified that your application was not awarded funding is allowable. However, there is no guarantee that you will be selected by the community-based organization for a subaward. But please know that this opportunity will still be available. Track 1, regional leads will need several months to develop their subaward program. So if interested in applying for a subaward, you must communicate with the Track 1 awardee in your region. They're the ones who are going to have answers about their timeline and the application process. So it's not working directly with CDFA, it is working with your local community-based organization that is funded for Track 1. We're almost at the end, guys. Okay, so how can we help during the application? We're going to have virtual office hours. So that just means I'll just be in a Zoom room in case anybody has a question every Tuesday in September from 12 to 1. So next Tuesday, you can find me in a Zoom room. The links to that Zoom room, to the office hours Zoom room, is on our website as well. So you'll see office hours. No need to register. Just click the link and join the room. And then we're offering a different set of times in October for folks who could not make the 12 to 1 time slot. So each Thursday in October between 4 and 5 p.m. We'll also have an office hours. And so that will go every Thursday through October 19th because the application closes on the 23rd. So again, this is just an opportunity for you to get your Q's and A's answered. The office hours are available in English and Spanish. Yo hablo español. Si alguien quiere hablar en español, I'll be there. Otherwise, you know, just there's no such thing as a bad question. Stop in anytime within the hour. There's going to be about a 15, hopefully less than 20-minute presentation that'll cover the basics in the beginning of the hour, and then the rest of the time is just for your questions and answers. When you do have questions, we can help by answering informational questions about the grant. That can happen via email or in those office hour webinars. And we also have pre-recorded technical support videos for the online application portal that's provided by Amplifund. What we cannot do is provide specific feedback on a grant idea, and we cannot assist with writing grant applications. So I mentioned that the application is in Amplifund, the web portal. So Amplifund is going to be hosting 2 separate webinars, and they're going to go through every single step from creating a login account so that you can even access Amplifund to going through every single question in the application. And so those webinars are going to be for Track 1. That webinar is going to be September 5th from 11 to noon. And again, the link for those trainings are on our website. And then for Track 2, there's going to be another informational webinar just for Track 2 folks on Thursday, September 7th at 4 p.m. It's actually 4 to 5:30 because we figured there might be more questions coming from folks in Track 2 about Amplifund. So just know that if you feel like you want someone to support you through that whole process of creating a login and understanding how all the little different buttons work and whether it's multiple choice or how to upload and download files that are part of the application, all of that will be covered. If you cannot make these webinars, do not worry, they will be recorded and posted onto our website. Also, Amplifund and on our website, there are already pre-recorded tutorials that are available for you, as well as a written document that guides you step by step through how to complete various things within Amplifund. So just know that there is support for you regarding navigating the Amplifund platform. I wanted to just highlight a few tiny things that you should know about Amplifund before you get started. One of them is that Amplifund will automatically open a window notifying you that your session is about to expire, even when you're actively typing. So the only thing that resets that clock is when you save your application. So if you've been typing and making edits and working on something, but you haven't saved it, it will think that you're not, that, you know, it'll time you out. So my advice to everybody is to save your work often. You can save it and come back to it in 4 days, whenever you want. There are 3 ways to save your work. You'll see a save and continue button. That's one option. You'll see a button that just says save. And then there'll be another button that says mark as complete. So please, please, please save your work often. If you're going to get up and, you know, make lunch or do whatever, please remember to save it, because the Amplifund will time you out and shut down the session if you are not there to let them know that you're still working on it. So just remember, you can always click save, log off, and then log back into Amplifund and resume your application at any time. And so here we go. Yeah, CDFA is maybe unable to answer questions that are specific to your application today. We can't give advice on how to frame or write an application. And then we're just asking folks to keep your questions to under 2 minutes. But that ends my slide presentation.